You know, as you think about, you know, your challenge of taking your current businesses, of course, you know, you have to be thinking about how do you take your current product and make it better. If you're not doing that, you're going to fall behind, and no bad product, nothing will save a bad product against a better competitor. But you also have to be thinking about, well, what are those threats to us? You know, are there new technologies coming out, new ways of doing business? And are there new markets that we can take it into? But I'm saying something stronger here. The best way to find opportunities here and here is actually to look here, is to look around your current product. And to illustrate that, let me go back to the case study of disruption. And I will apologize for using Apple in an innovation talk. I know you're kind of immediately going, oh no, he's going to tell Apple. But I'm going to tell the Apple story because I'm convinced that for the most part, it's not been interpreted correctly historically. It's hard to remember how bad things were at Apple back then. That Apple had 12% share, it had just dropped to 9%, right? This is a market growing faster than Apple was. Most of the technology is controlled by suppliers like Intel, and they're giving that technology to other companies before they're giving it to Apple. They lost 15% of sales. Michael Dell was quoted as saying Apple should just liquidate the company and return the money to shareholders, because they did have some money in the bank. And think about it, you know, what would you do if you were in that situation? So Steve Jobs comes back in late 96, early 97. And the first thing he does is he gets rid of all the crap that Apple, to find sales, had been going into all kinds of crazy markets. I mean, they were making cameras, they were making game consoles to go up against Xbox and PlayStation. They were taking their Newton platform and blowing out in lots of different directions. He got rid of all that. They had been putting out one Mac after another. They had 105 new Macs in 95 and 96, 54 and then 51. Gets rid of all that and just focuses on 2 laptops and 2 desktops. Sales fall even further, but at least profits rebound to where he's about break even. Redesigns them, comes out, remember this one, right, the 1998? So redesign, not much different inside, but it really boosted sales at a critical time as they were rewriting their operating system, but kind of went too far with that. This is sometimes called the Willy Wonka phase of Apple design. But then it kind of settles down over time, and then in 2001, Steve Jobs comes out at Macworld with this diagram, and he says, your life is becoming more digital, right? Your movies are digital, your music is digital, your pictures are digital, your contacts, your calendar is digital. Everything is digital, and we want to help you manage your digital life. And nowhere is that more difficult than with music. And so what he does is he introduces iTunes and the iPod in 2001. Now, the year before, they had bought a company called SoundJam, which was basically iTunes. So iTunes was nothing new. It was just an MP3 management system back then. And he renames it and updates it a bit and calls it iTunes and rolls it out the next year. The iPod was an MP3 player. I mean, what was new is it had a hard disk in it. A lot of people thought that the tripling of cost to make it into an MP3 player that held more music was something that nobody needed or nobody wanted. And so the initial reviews of the iPod were actually pretty negative. But the whole idea of the iTunes and the iPod was not to disrupt the music industry. It was to sell more Macs. He was looking for opportunities to make the Mac more valuable. And if you doubt that, go back and read the biography of Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. He resisted taking iTunes to the IBM platform because he thought that that would actually erode the sales of the Mac, which is what he was trying to push. Of course, then what happened was, because he, I don't know if you remember the Rip, Mix, Burn ad campaign, which is take your CDs, rip them, into digital format and burn them onto other CDs or listen to them on your iPod. But the music companies went nuts and they said, you can't do that. You're basically encouraging piracy. And he said, okay, well, if you want, then sell your music on iTunes. So 2003 opens up the iTunes store. Again, nothing new. Sony tried to sell music online by the song in 1998, as did other companies. They didn't do it very well because they weren't thinking about the total user experience. Then rolls it out, and I think the first time he genuinely does something deliberately disruptive is 10 years later in 2007 when he brings out the iPhone. But even then, the first phone that had iTunes on it was the Motorola Rocker in 2005. They screwed it up, and so he yanks back the contract and comes out with the iPhone in 2007. By innovating around his product, his core product of the Mac, he saw opportunities and ended up following those opportunities into the telecommunications business, right? The iPod morphed over time steadily to become the iPhone. And then now most of their profits are coming not from the big screen, but the small screen. So he found his opportunity to grow, not by trying to disrupt, but rather by trying to complement his core product.